Hey everybody, welcome back to Backlog Banter. I'm your boy Abram, joined as usual by Tucker Hazel, and we're here today to bring gaming content back to the channel proper because I'm back home from Florida. And today we're going to talk about Xbox. But before we do, Tucker, here's the deal. You already subscribed to Backlog Banter. You're
I
already in
am.
the Backlog Banter
That's true.
Discord. You already have your notifications on. And
True.
you're probably you're
I'll think about it for a
probably
second.
you're probably in the top 30 coolest people I know, right?
Sheesh. All right.
And so if you, audience member, want to crack that very prestigious list, then you
Yeah.
should subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, and join the Discord. Discord's been popping recently. Make sure you come over there and chat with us. But Tucker,
Yes.
I'm back home. And the first thing I did was when I got home, literally, I put my suitcase down, had a little bit of a bite of food, and I immediately put the Ascent and Microsoft Flight Sim downloading onto my Xbox.
Hmm.
And what I wanted to do today, Tucker, was continue down the path that a lot of people have been taking of Xbox evangelism, right?
Sure. Okay.
Because I really think that this year for Xbox is truly exciting.
Hmm.
And coming back home today and booting my system back up and seeing people have so much fun with the Halo Infinite beta and have all these great new exclusives to play on through Game Pass and everything, I really think that we're being provided with a much stronger ecosystem experience, especially in 2021,
Hmm.
by Xbox than we're being provided by either Nintendo or Sony.
Yeah. This is kind of the other side of the coin of the PlayStation 5 2021 being disappointing video that we
Yes.
put out a few weeks ago, where we discussed the fact that there really isn't anything major coming to PlayStation. I mean, they got Deathloop, they got a few re-releases, but the rest of the year and into the future is a little bit off kilter. It's not really clear what's going on with
Yeah.
PlayStation, but that's not stopping PlayStation from having the most successful year in their entire history. So there is an interesting dichotomy here where we're going and talking about Xbox and how exciting it is to be an Xbox owner and in that ecosystem. However, it's not necessarily bringing them up to par. It's bringing them closer to PlayStation. But for me, I am more interested in the Xbox ecosystem at the moment because of Game Pass, because there is a consistent slate of games releasing. They're feeding us consistent updates in a way that Sony has just been dropping for most of
Yeah.
this year. Um, but when I look into the future, Sony is the one that I'm have more excitement towards because I don't have the connection to Xbox. I've played a couple of
Sure.
Xbox games, but I just for a little background information bought my first game on Xbox the other day. I'd never done that once in my life before. I bought Death's Door for only $10. Thank you, Microsoft, for randomly sending me a $10 gift card. But that's just goes to show that while I'm interested in it, it really hasn't grabbed me yet.
I think so. So two things I want to say. First of all, your
Yes.
point about Sony's sales figures is very astute. It's almost like we tried to record this video already and then started over.
Yeah.
But I think what's curious is that there's about 10 million now, 10 million plus PlayStation 5 sold, and various numbers that have come from insiders and kind of extrapolation put Xbox around maybe 6.5 million
Yeah, that's what
units.
I've heard.
So there's a pretty big disparity there. Ultimately, a 3.5 million unit difference doesn't matter if you've sold 43.5 million units and then 40 million,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
So the question is going to be, do they keep selling at like a 30% difference? Then there's something bigger to talk about. So I'm not necessarily too bothered, or I don't think too much about those numbers yet, because ultimately early on it's not really a great indication of where we're going to end up.
Though I
Um,
would I would like to say, would like to note, well, of course, Sony is the one doing better sales wise this year.
yeah.
This is the fastest selling Xbox console.
Yes.
So while it is not entirely commensurate to the sales of the PlayStation 5, Xbox is doing better than they ever have before. And I think that is
Yeah.
because of how friendly their ecosystem is and how much access people are being given to get into that ecosystem and get involved, and then hopefully eventually want to buy that ultimate
Yeah.
piece of hardware, which is the most powerful console in the industry at the moment.
Yeah, and I mean, I can sit here and tell you all about Game Pass, but there's been 18 billion people who've done that before me and done it in a lot more eloquent a manner.
Can't even
Um,
say elephant.
can't even say it. So there's really no sense in harping on that. But I think you're right. I just think that the potency of this ecosystem and what it's providing is really strong. And then I gotta say, I think probably my big mistake last year was to buy a Series S and a PS5 opposed to just a Series X.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to go back in time, I would just do that. because then you get that great backwards compatibility suite through the disk drive and everything that
Yeah.
is still there on the S, but digital only, of course. So I think it's a very strong proposition. I think that's a really good point you brought up. But I wanted to think a little bit about the games specifically in this discussion,
Fine.
opposed to the services, as I've talked and written about quite a bit already. And I think your point about buying Death's Door is really important
Mhm.
because part of the stigma that kept me uninterested in Xbox, I suppose, for a long time was that
Yeah.
it is the Halo Gears Forza machine.
Yeah.
And it still is. Halo Infinite is obviously Halo Infinite and Forza are leading the holiday, and Halo Infinite is going to be the biggest game they release now and for probably the entire generation. And I'm
Sure.
stoked
Yeah.
about it, especially since people really love that technical test. But I think what's so special about Xbox right now is that you bought Death's Door. I am playing The Ascent, right?
Hmm.
I am really excited as you are for Psychonauts 2.
Yeah.
We have those more traditional tropey Xbox titles,
Hmm.
but they are widening their ecosystem from a games perspective in a way that nobody else is. In fact, when I would argue that Sony is closing theirs a little
Yeah.
bit and focusing more on the high end, big AAA, third person, over the shoulder action adventure titles, you have Xbox doing the ID at Xbox program where you could try 50 demos of indie titles.
Yeah.
And that's being pushed as hard as you're pushing Halo Infinite. And I'm on Game Pass downloading a flight sim next to an Ascent. I think that's really important. And I think it's kind of going unnoticed the way that Xbox is kind of shoving itself in the middle of the indie conversation in a way that Nintendo did with Indies for a while and PlayStation did prior to that. And
Yes.
that's going to be really important, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I had a very weird conundrum earlier this week, which is not a conundrum in any particularly large sense, but is to say I have never been interested in an Xbox exclusive indie before. I love indie games. I buy them on
Yeah.
every other platform except for Xbox. I mean, as I said, I've never bought into Xbox games in general. That
Yeah.
system, the games that I want to play on Xbox are mostly everywhere else. If it's third party stuff, if it's indies that are ported on Xbox, but Death's Door was for the first time something I was hearing great stuff about, which is honestly something that you don't hear much about Xbox exclusive indies, and that it was on there. So if I like, okay, I want to be part of
Yeah.
this indie conversation. It's cheap. People are really liking it. I have to go join this ecosystem in a way that they never really did for indies before. So that's a perfect example of the reason or example of them expanding to that.
I will note that, of course, they are the ones that kind of started the entire indie trend on console
Yeah,
back
of
with the
course.
early
360.
360
Yes.
and Xbox Live Arcade, and getting things like Limbo first, and I
Yeah.
think Bastion and things of that nature. But it's been a long time, which is really
Mhm.
more our point before the commenters come after us, which they probably won't because we don't get a lot of comments. You should comment, by the way. I won't read it, but Tucker will. Makes me feel better when we get comments also, even though I don't acknowledge them. But I think it's important that they're getting back into that lane because really, I think Microsoft's entire challenge is completely optical. I think we're quickly going to get to a point where there's going to be so many high quality exclusives releasing, maybe
Mhm.
not all highest scale,
Sure.
but high quality for their niches, and then the bigger titles like your Infinite, and you're gonna have all the services, and then you're gonna have games that scale down to the small end of the spectrum. There really is no fundamental issue that I have with Xbox as a platform. I have
Yeah.
many fundamental issues with PlayStation, and I have Martin Luther's 95 theses of issues with how Nintendo runs what runs their ecosystem, right? But the challenge is getting people to think beyond the Gears, Forza, Halo, Xbox has no games
Yeah.
kind of narrative because
Mhm.
it's no longer true. And I think that this year is becoming a really clear example of why that is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't think that I'm interested in a ton of the games that are coming out this year for them, but I think that is only a testament to the fact that I was never excited for any games coming to Xbox before this year. And this year, Death's Door, Psychonauts 2, Forza Horizon 4, and Halo Infinite, I'm all at least interested in giving a try, if not getting
Yeah,
into them in a more significant capacity. So the fact that I have access to these games in a way that I didn't before because I'm mooching off my roommate's Xbox, but
yeah,
that I'm on Game Pass right now, and I don't even own an Xbox.
right.
But there is stuff that I want to play on there, so I'm interested to see if this momentum carries forward into the next year with a consistent slate of exclusives releasing, crossing a spectrum of
Yeah.
sizes and studios and all of that and genres. And if it what grabs me, that's what I mean. Obviously, that's what I'm concerned about most. If
Yeah,
this
believe it or
slate
not.
continues, I want it to grab me into where I say, okay, wow, 2022 has a long slate of games that I'm interested in across the spectrum. I need to go
Yeah.
get an Xbox because this is the only place I can play them.
See, I think you might be underselling it a little bit because you got to throw in things like your 12 minutes, which I know you're very
Oh, of
excited
course.
about.
Yeah, I honestly forgot about
And
that.
and by the time you think about Psychonauts, Death's Door, 12 minutes, Forza, Halo Infinite,
Yeah.
that's already arguably more exclusive than you're interested in on Nintendo's side, or
Hmm.
pretty close to, and more definitely what PlayStation's offering.
Yeah.
And the combined cost of those, especially if you throw a couple other things in there, is paying for your system.
Yeah.
And
And
I
$10
think
for Death Store.
right, and right, we can't forget that. That's going to throw all the calculus out of whack. But that's really important, I
Yeah.
think. I think that's really important to register, and that's something I've been thinking about a lot when I start to look forward, and I think, yeah, I'm really excited for Monkey Ball and Metroid Dread.
Yeah.
Can't wait for those games. But outside of that, with the exception of probably Deathloop, every other game I want to play for the rest of the year is on Game Pass, and it's in the Xbox ecosystem.
Hmm.
And it's really making me reconsider kind of the ways that I stack these three ecosystems up.
Sure.
I mean, Nintendo is always going to be my number one. It has been since I was a kid. It's just not going to change. But I think that this is becoming probably the new de facto home for me to play anything else,
Yeah.
because you think about something like Back for Blood. I have no inherent interest to play Back for Blood, but the fact that Xbox is going out there and making that deal with WB to have that on Game Pass and have that in the ecosystem, I think is really important. And
Hmm.
we're going to see more deals like that, as Phil Spencer has mentioned. And that just makes it very challenging for me to want to play somewhere else. And especially coming off of our discussion we had when I was visiting you about how PlayStation is letting us down,
Yeah.
this is just a really compelling place to be.
Yeah, I think what really it boils down to for me, excitement wise, looking towards the future, is hoping and praying that Xbox takes this momentum that they have with each of
Yeah.
these exclusives that they're finally putting on their platform and giving someone on the outside a reason to you need to buy this console if you want to play this. They're not everywhere else. You can't get just a couple of them.
Yeah.
But is I want them to take this momentum and apply it to growing these series into things that people really are excited for across the industry. I think the reason Nintendo is number one for me is because while they don't necessarily have, or they do have the most exclusives on the whole in terms of franchises people are excited for, it's
Yeah.
because they've spent their entire history cultivating each of these franchises and saying, okay, when a new first party Nintendo franchise comes out, we are going to put all of our backing, or a lot of
Yeah,
backing
sure.
behind this. This is going to be a release for the industry that people are going to notice. Xbox has a handful of those franchises, but because it's just a few surrounded by smaller stuff, it has always felt a little bit barren. But if they use this and say, okay, the all the studios that they've purchased, we've got a Hellblade sequel coming out, we've got a Fable, we've got these things. These are
Yeah.
exclusive games that we are going to push on the level of a Forza or a Halo or a Gears. It can finally fill out to what Sony and Nintendo have, which is tons of great exclusive first party series that you get excited to have on your console.
See, I agree that it's important to have a handful of those, and I think
Mhm.
that's what they're doing with Infinite. And I really think this game is going to be gigantic, and I think it's going to do very well. Especially hearing a lot of 343 Industries Halo naysayers say that, yeah, Infinite's fucking awesome based
Yeah.
off of that tech demo. I think that game is really going to be what you're talking about.
Hmm.
But I think the reason that this is becoming my second favorite ecosystem easily is because it's not reliant on that.
Sure.
I think that Nintendo has franchises that I love more than anyone else's in the industry, but they have the same franchises.
Yeah.
We get excited when they have one or two new games, right?
Hmm.
PlayStation's going to launch the Ghost of Tsushima, sure, but Ghost of Tsushima ultimately doesn't fall far from the tree in terms of what's come before, what's come
Sure.
since.
Yeah. Of course.
What I like about Xbox right now is in a space where we're almost totally stagnating in terms of what AAA is offering.
Hmm.
That's really not what we're getting out of Xbox. We're not getting that stagnation. You look at they're giving the opportunity for a team like Bluebird to make the medium, which sure it didn't hit, but there's no other ecosystem that's going to allow them to take that kind of chance on a AAA
Yeah, of
level.
course.
Sea of Thieves has become a fixture in the live service game marketplace, and it is not a Destiny, and it's not a Warzone, and Apex, whatever.
Yeah.
Right. You look at things like Everwild. You look at the chances they're taking on not Bite Back, which I wish it was called. The one tagline Bite Back, Redfall.
Oh,
They're
God damn it.
they they're releasing new IP at a rate and scale that nobody else is, and that's
Yes.
really important. And it's happening smaller too.
Mhm.
Sure, it's franchise is less of a consideration in the indie space, but when you prop up, your Ascents and your other things in this space and in this way, it's bringing a new blood that nobody else is bringing, and nobody else has the space to bring.
Yeah.
That Bloomberg report said PlayStation just doesn't. They're not operating in a way that's going to allow for that anymore.
Mhm.
And Nintendo does sometimes, but the new IP was Splatoon, and I love Splatoon, but now we're on Splatoon 3.
Yeah.
At a certain point, this is your gateway into those new experiences.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean we'll see as these games continue to come out, and things like the Ascent, which honestly I didn't really hear a lot about pre-launch, but now that it has come out, I've actually heard mixed things about it now that it has come out. But it is a game that clearly people are interested in because Microsoft was putting it up there on their list. Hey, we've got Hades, Ascent, Psychonauts, Microsoft Flight Sim. That game being up there with three of the big games of the year for Xbox is exciting, because even though it might not perfectly hit, it gets more eyes on it than honestly I wouldn't even know it existed if they didn't put it on all of their promotional things and say, hey, this is coming out. Remember, mark your dates. They've always got the date on it, which is very nice. But I really do appreciate that, and I'm excited to see how this plays going forward. If they expand this, if they keep it about the same with a one or two indie or smaller titles pushed alongside the bigger stuff, but they have the opportunity to make that a secondary fixture for the console. And I think you're right, that's very exciting, something that no one else is really doing. I think back to the launch of the Switch, when indies were obviously one of the most important things, and they had those indie showcases, and people were talking about Snipper Clips and Untitled Goose Game and these games that were promoted by Nintendo, and they were very excited to be played on that platform. There's a handful of them now. Or you think back to the PlayStation 4, where they really did talk a lot about indies, and there were those smaller titles, or even the late PS3, where Sony and their indie teams were having good synergy. That's basically gone for PS5. Of course, those games are coming out on the PS5 because it's the most popular system. It's got the momentum coming off the PlayStation 4. But I don't think indie teams are very excited to work with Sony as they are with either of the other companies.
Well, I mean, to that point, there's been people who have talked both candidly and kind of tacitly about how much of a pain in the ass Sony is to work with as an indie studio now. And I think the fact that Microsoft is saying, well, we'll pay you this hefty sum of money for your game to now be a console exclusive, and you're going to have all of these eyes on it. That's something they're not getting anywhere else. I mean, Sony's being a motherfucker, and Nintendo is going to put you in an indie showcase, and then you're going to have zero discoverability on the platform ever. Find a game find the game that released on Nintendo Switch 5 weeks ago. How are you going to do it?
Yeah.
There's literally no way to do it. So I think that's really important. The other thing that's really important here, Tucker, is my telephone.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, I was sitting on my grandparents' couch while we were trying to log into Disney Plus, which turned out to be an hour-long endeavor. And so while I was there futzing around on my phone, I downloaded the Game Pass app. And I started playing. Now, this is literally just a test, so it's not an indication of me going back to it, but I booted up Banjo-Kazooie because it has touch controls. And on my grandparents' awful Wi-Fi, I was able to, on my phone right here, play Banjo-Kazooie. And then I clicked on Halo Master Chief Collection. It said, connect your Xbox controller and play Halo Master Chief Collection right here.
Yeah.
This is really important, and I think it's going to become more important over time. You can play Sea of Thieves and Gears 5 with touch controls on your phone right now.
Wild.
And that's fucking nuts. And you can play, there's like 80 games supported with touch, and then everything else supported if you just connect this via Bluetooth or any of the other number of like the backbone, like stick it on your phone deal or whatever. And that's going to be really important. And that's going to be the momentum and what's important coming next year. Because you talk about, we got to make sure they keep up the momentum. They will. And the reason they will, because a regular mortal man commits crimes that puts them on death row for 0.1% of the money that Microsoft makes in a quarter of a year. There is no concern about anything drawing up and stopping this from persisting. I don't think we're in a bubble. I think we are just in the new normal for what the Xbox ecosystem is.
Sure, I hope so.
And that is why right now, after futzing around with Game Pass on my phone and coming back and downloading these other titles, I started to just kind of put these pieces together in my mind and think that, yeah, if there's no big Nintendo release coming out or small Nintendo release, because I'll play that too, I'm gonna turn on my Xbox and I'm not gonna turn on my PlayStation.
Yeah. I think all of this just points to Sony being too big for their fucking britches right now. And of course, it's mostly focused on Microsoft doing such a great job with all their accessibility and bringing in new teams and all of that. But it mostly just makes me disappointed in Sony because I'm happy for Xbox. I'm excited for the future of that. But I'm like, come on, Sony, you were the good guys. What you doing now?
Well, see, what I would say to that is I think you're right, but I think that a PlayStation 5 operating at full capacity is still completely different than Xbox operating at full capacity, because we've seen that the intent with PlayStation 5 is now going to be, we're going to release our 2 or 3 or 4 major exclusives throughout the calendar year for $70 each. We're not going to have any real service infrastructure behind it. Buy PS Now if you want or don't. But the intention is on the highest fidelity AAA titles at the highest price point. And that's the entire charge. And when that's operating at full capacity, great, then I'll play 4 games on my PlayStation a year.
Yeah.
But I play games almost every day, right? So I think there's a marked difference between a PlayStation is going to offer the blockbusters that we want, and an Xbox is going to offer the ecosystem I want to be in every day.
They offer the everything else.
The everything else.
Yeah.
And hopefully some games at that scale. I think Halo Infinite is going to be the first one. And then I think we're going to get like the quadruple A Perfect Dark, whatever the fuck that means, and things like that. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited.
Yeah, me too. I guess that's the thing. I'm just very excited. And it's fun to talk about this. It's fun to be in a brand new ecosystem and to feel like it's not just like, oh, a console I bought that I'm not going to use. In fact, the contrary, it's the PlayStation 5 when I've been an avid PlayStation fan since the PlayStation 2 that I don't use. So that's very peculiar. You want to add anything else?
No, it's just the way of the world. That's how that brownie crumbles. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, do I ever?
Oh, do you ever? All right.
You don't want to have a dry brownie. You want to have a moist brownie.
That's true. Damn.
But here's where it gets really
solid.
Here's where it gets fucked up.
Okay.
My mom likes to really underbake them and have the middle like gooey and not raw, so you can get food poisoning, but gooey to where you almost have to eat it with like a spoon. I don't like that.
No. Yeah, no, I'm not a fan.
I like the corner piece where you get the crispy edge and like the moist middle.
Yeah, great point. Now here's the thing. I criticize your mother because while those brownies are edible and you will not get food poisoning, the experience of eating them is like eating a not properly cooked brownie.
Right.
Like you think in your mind, I'm getting food poisoning from this because this is not cooked right. And when you put your mouth and you chew and you're like, what the fuck? And it's just a negative experience.
Texture is very important to me when it comes to food.
Yeah.
If you could throw it onto the ceiling and it would stick and cling there, then I don't want to eat it. That's generally the way I think.
Sure, but isn't that exactly what you're supposed to do with noodles? You're supposed to cook them until they stick. You throw it against the wall and it sticks. If it doesn't fall, then you know it's probably cooked.
Well, I think that's different from like a viscous substance. Like a noodle,
yeah,
you gotta,
great point. That's a little more solid,
there.
a little more tautness.
Yeah.
Haven't used the word taut in a long time.
Well, that's our Xbox discussion.
Yeah, it is.
I was just playing the Ascent before we started, and I've got Microsoft Flight Sim installing.
It didn't deserve a full thumbs up. My thumb is up, but it's not like up.
Of course. Yeah, right. I don't deserve a full thumbs up.
It's like a thumbs up.
Yeah.